Hello, Brindley.
How are you? How are you, BJ?
Oh, you're muted. Everybody's muted. How about that? It's a magic trick. Or my volume is muted.
I'm not muted. But of
you.
course, hashtag real life, my lawn people of all the times during the day that nailed it. 12:30 on the dot or 11 your time. So
They're better than my lawn people. So
do your lawn people not show up?
my lawn people is 16 years old, and I do generally have to drag him out of bed and slap him around a little bit.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, they started showing up at like 7 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, that ain't gonna work. I mean, you're mowing grass. Like who? Yeah, no. They always show up at the perfect times, don't they?
Yeah, exactly.
Hi, everybody.
We get in trouble that we're on.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Jenny.
Yeah.
Samantha, Marcia,
Can I hear?
Tom.
Okay. All right. Let me see what I can do, and then I'll let you know on that. How long does it take to get every time?
Krieger's putting a deal together.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
Where's
All right.
where's Jacob?
Will do. Thank you. No problem. Okay. Bye.
I don't know. Megan, I know, was in a, I know she's been in an appointment all morning, so I'm assuming she's getting held over. I don't really know. And we got a couple of minutes before we start, but. Oh, there's Jacob.
Here I am. Good morning.
Hey, Phil. Brindley, what's the weather like in your neck of the woods?
Well, I'm in Tampa, Florida, so we're getting highs of 80s, but I am headed to the Pacific Northwest on Monday for the summer to Washington State. And so that'll, I'm sure, will be a little bit cooler. So I'm looking forward to that. Florida gets a little hot in the summer and a little unbearable. It's like wet and hot, like all the time. Like you don't need to shower because Mother Nature takes care of it for you.
Right.
So I'm really looking forward to going up there because I've heard they're like in the 60s and 70s right now. So
not bad. Is that typical for you? That's your, you guys do that every year?
yeah, so I manifested it. I guess it'll be 2 years in October. I just threw it out there and said, hey, I'd love to spend my summers. It's actually Bellingham. If you've heard of, I don't know if you've ever heard of Ben Kinney yet. That's where the city that I go to. And I threw it out there and I did my first summer last summer. And I'm going back for round 2. So I'll probably buy something next year. Right now I have a girlfriend who has a full 2-bedroom apartment with a garage in their basement. And so I stay there for the summer.
That sounds really fantastic, as a matter of fact. So
I mean, life by design, right? Like
I was gonna say, I actually am gonna learn how to have a life worth living after today. So I'm really looking forward to the next 30 minutes now.
Well, it's leverage, right? Leverage is what gives us that freedom to do that.
I love that. It's one of those things that we all talk about. There's very few of us, I find, that actually live it. So I appreciate the fact that you're doing it.
Oh, thank you, BJ. Thank you. I know that was what I said. I was like, we talk about this life by design, but how many of us are actually living the life that we actually want to design? Right?
John Kirstein is clearly.
Yeah.
I don't know where he's sitting today, but
Today. Hi, Megan.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I am good.
Megan, you want to kick us off?
If my internet will allow it. Well, hello all. As I told you yesterday, we have Brindley Tucker with us today, and I had a call with her. I don't even know how many days ago that was now. A couple days ago. All the days run together. But we talked a lot about systems and the need for systems and how overwhelming it can be to create those. And then we go into a shift like this and we find that our systems all need looked at again and probably modified to adjust to where we're at right now. And if we do shift back in June and find a new normal, we may have to modify those systems yet again. So she is with us here today as a guru of systems, and she's going to talk to us about what we can do to ease the burden of creating those systems and what it looks like for them to be virtual, and where transaction management may be headed, how we best serve our clients. And so she's going to tell us all the things that we all need to hear today about systems. So Brindley, take it away.
Well, and I love when I have, usually when I have about less than 30 people on a call, I kind of start off, and you can continue to do this, use the chat box. I've been using Zoom for a lot of years. I've been running a virtual team myself for almost about 8 years. So use the chat box. If you have questions, I'll kind of weave them in, and then we'll save some time at the end for Q&A. Yet, if I could just have 2 or 3 people, what are you hoping to get out of today? What do you hope to walk away with?
I hope that I'll learn more about how I can automate my business so that I will find things happening without me having to touch them.
Got it. Love that, Philip.
I think that and that high level of customer service, right? How do I give my clients a better experience?
Okay.
I want to know what
Okay.
systems you're using. Oops, sorry.
Okay.
Can I go?
You already
Any
did
gaps that I might have, I'm the director of our team. So any gaps I might have in our system right now.
And then what tools you're using in Command to automate, or what systems you put in place Command that we can use?
Okay.
Or out of Command, what's other systems you may be using?
Okay.
And I'm just looking for validation that I'm doing it right.
Okay. All right. That's awesome. Jenny, did you have something before I go on? I thought I saw Jenny unmute herself. No? Okay. And I also just saw my friend Dawn Peters come on the line. Hi, Dawn. So just want to give her a shout out. She's a huge supporter. So I think what we have to talk about first.
We got one more. Oh.
Yes.
What value can you add to a system that you already have created? So what other things can you add to it? No?
Awesome.
Oh, what value does it add to clients? Sorry. I was this was so, hey, we're busy, so you might as well just say it. I just can't.
I love
We're
it.
so busy.
But I love it. All right. And I just ask if you guys can mute yourself. Questions, put them in the chat box. So I think the first place, what I'm hearing a theme of is obviously systems. And what I love is that nobody really said people, which means that our first opportunity is already solved. Because see, what a lot of realtors do is they throw people at a problem because we want a quick fix, right? We want to stop the hemorrhaging as quickly as possible. We get so busy that we can't even, not on purpose yet, we can't even slow down to speed up, right? And so what we do is we just start throwing money at the problems, which usually comes in the form of people. And that's when the revolving door of bad hires starts. When really where we should be starting is with our systems. And so there's a couple questions I'm going to give you today that I want you to take to your businesses. And I'd like you to ask yourself these questions. If you have a team, even if it's just one person, I want you to ask them that too. If you use an independent transaction manager, I want you to ask them because they know your business. That first question is going to be, what am I doing that if I stopped doing it, no one would notice? What am I doing that if I stopped doing it, no one would notice? Now, I can't tell you what that is in your business, yet I promise that if you go through and you start looking at every aspect of your business and you start asking yourself those questions, you're going to be fascinated with the amount of things that you do that absolutely no one even notices, nor, and not to be offensive, do they care. Yet we think they do, and we have this almost delusion that in order to offer this high level of customer service, we need to do all of these things, and we overcomplicate it and justify it by our competitive advantage, when really our clients don't even see it, or they don't even recognize it, or they don't even appreciate it. So it's actually working against you, not for you. The second question is, what are we not doing that if we did it, or what am I not doing that if I did it, it would increase my profitability and my efficiency? What am I not doing that if I started doing it, it would increase my efficiency and my profitability? Now, the first one that I typically find that people find with that one is they're not tracking their numbers. And so when I talk about systems, the first thing I start with is for my agents, your 20%, as Gary outlines it in MREA, is 5 things: lead generation, lead follow-up, going on appointments, scripts and role play, and negotiating contracts. That's all the 5 things. That's all you should be doing. Everything else that has to be done in order for the business to move, not necessarily move forward, right? Just to move, should be done by someone else. And so the first hire that I always introduce, which is a little bit off model, yet when the book was written, they didn't really exist. So we're not too far off model, and Gary kind of approves of it, is the first thing you want to do is hire an independent transaction coordinator. And really, you should hire that from your first deal. Well, I need to know how to do it. No, you don't. Remember that whole thing, what am I doing, that if I stopped doing it, no one would notice? Buyers and sellers don't care. And they don't care about you knowing as much as they care about getting the best price for their home, selling their home for the best price, and getting to closing on time. And so who's going to do that best? If you're a new agent, you only know what you know, right? And Gary talks about the unconscious uncompetence and then moving into conscious uncompetence. Why not have someone represent you on deals that's been doing this and can do it in their sleep? They're going to make you look like a rock star. They're also going to keep you out of a courtroom, because it's not that you're going to do anything on purpose. It's just you don't know what you don't know. So the first hire that you can help leverage is to use that TC. Now, I do put some caveats with that, because that was where I started in the business. I had an independent transaction management company, and we did about 2,000 real estate transactions a year. And I always say this, we have to remember though, that when you hire an independent TC, they are a third party. You don't necessarily get to dictate how they do things, right? You don't get to tell them what system to use. You don't get to tell them that you want your signature on their email. You're leveraging them so that you don't have to bring on a full-time assistant yet. And so that all of that minutia that takes up so much time can be done by someone else. And they're the expert in that field. So the reason I also like this is indirectly, you're already now starting to learn how to let go from day one, from right now, which letting go is some of the hardest part of introducing leverage and systems into our lives. Somebody, I think it was Philip, mentioned, what systems can I automate so that I don't have to touch it? And that's really hard, right? It's hard to automate things and not have that control, because what if a client gets an email that's incorrect? What if something automatically goes out and wishes them a happy birthday and it's not their birthday? Well, this is where I say, don't take yourself so seriously. Call the client and say, every day should be your birthday. I'm just celebrating you today, right? I think sometimes we have this we want everything to be perfect, and this is not a perfect business. And so the first thing that you want to do is ask yourself those 2 questions. And the second thing I would say is to take a notebook. It doesn't have to be fancy. Keep it by your side and write down everything you do in a day and how long it takes you. Write down everything you do in a day and how long it takes you. And at the end of the day, I want you to come up with what your average hourly rate is based on what you're doing. Because I know I didn't get into real estate to make 12 bucks an hour. I might have started in real estate at $12 an hour, but I didn't get into real estate to work my tail off, work 6 days a week, make my business one of the main priorities in my life to make $12 an hour. And yet when I start sitting down and realizing how much I'm taking control of, I realize that I am lowering my hourly rate by the minute. And so when you look at that list, if there's anything on it that you could pay someone less than what you want your hourly rate to be, then you need leverage to take those things. Now, a lot of you are going, yeah, but that costs money. And yes, it is one of the scariest things is to look at an investment and say, okay, I have to hire someone. I have to make sure their families are fed. Yet if you have the ability to take the risk to step out and invest in yourself and hire that person, then you are the type of individual that is going to always make sure they're paid, because you're going to work twice as hard. Also, the right talent is going to double your business. So number one, if you're not using an independent transaction coordinator, start using one. Number two, write down everything that you do and clock how long it's taking you. Once you've done that, then go to number three and go back to the 5 things and ask yourself, what is my system for each of those 5 things in my business? What is my lead generation system? Do I have one? How am I tracking lead gen? How am I knowing who to call, when to call? You know, I hear it all the time. Command's not ready. Command can't do this. Command can't do that. I get it. Yet, you know, somebody once told me, if you want to hear more about my personal story, the One Thing podcast, episode 78, the One Thing podcast, episode 78, I have a pretty cool story personally. And I've been in recovery, and something that someone said to me in recovery when I was working through a lot of my childhood baggage was, when are you going to stop looking at everything that your mother didn't do for you and start looking at all the things she did do for you? So when are we going to stop looking at everything that Command's not doing for us and start looking at everything that Command is doing for us? And right now, Command is at a point where it's not so complicated that you can simply get in there, put your contacts in and do lead gen, and it will tell you who to call. You can put them on a smart plan, right? It's just we sometimes overcomplicate things to justify inaction. Well, I can't do it because it's just so overly complicated. So how do we uncomplicate it? What is it that we want to achieve? Well, I want to achieve 40 contacts a day. Great. Who are you going to call? Well, I don't know. Okay, well, where's your sphere? Well, it's in my phone. It's in my email. Okay, let's just start day 1. Can you commit to putting 100 people in Command from your phone and from your email? Awesome. On day 2, can you commit to calling those people? You know, it's a saying of, how do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time. So it's just with your systems, it's going back, and a system is here to take you from X to Y by Z. So that's the equation. It's here to take you from X to Y by Z. And you have to determine, where are you now? Where do you want to go? And when do you want to get there by? Before you can determine the how you're going to get from X to Y. So we always start with the outcome first. What is it that we're trying to achieve? And then we dial back and break it back down and chunk it down to how we can get there. So what's your lead gen system? You know, when I ask people, what are the 5 things that a millionaire real estate agent should be doing? There's one that they always forget. Always. It's always one. Wait, what's that 5th one? And that's lead follow-up. And lead follow-up is where the money is. Lead follow-up is where the relationship is. And right now, everything that we're hearing is about mind share and relationship. And that's where the relationship happens, yet we don't have a strong follow-up system in place. Right? We're putting our leads into a database, we're calling them, yet what system do we have in place to tell us when to follow up with them? Command, again, focusing on what it does do, it will do a strong lead follow-up system for you. And the evolution of real estate systems, if you look at them, and I've studied all of them, is that a real estate system, when it's built, 90% of the time, they are going to start with the sales side of the system because that's where the money is made. That's where the return is made. So if you're trying to focus on using transaction management and all the bells and whistles, right? You're focusing on the wrong part of the system because that's the last part of the system that's going to be built. Now, for us right now, it's a challenge because we have to submit, some of us have to submit through DocuSign for our compliance, right? And they have to be opportunities in command. Yet again, looking at what the system does and simply using it for what it does instead of all the things that it's not doing. So lead generation, lead follow-up, knowing what your lead follow-up plan is. And guys, don't overcomplicate it. I'd rather you literally, if it's reminders in your calendar, to do that and call people back than to not have anything and not call at all. Because eventually, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Your follow-up will get to be so much that calendar reminders won't work anymore, right? And you'll have to move to a bigger system. And the evolution of the activity will lead you to the better system. But you've got to start somewhere and just get started. Done is better than perfect. Now, if you have a lead generation system and you have a lead follow-up system, I challenge you to go back and ask yourself, is it working? Is it working? What's working about it? What's not working about it? Am I getting a 2 to 7 time return on it? Am I just spinning the drain? Am I just calling and calling and calling? We don't lead generate just to dial. We lead generate to convert into appointments. So is your system doing what you need it to do? Again, what is the system supposed to be providing? Start with the end in mind. Well, my lead generation and my lead follow-up system is supposed to be giving me appointments. Awesome. Is it? No. Why not? What do you need to change in it for you to start getting appointments? Well, I need to make sure the data is correct. I need to make sure people are tagged. I need to make sure they're grouped properly. Awesome. Where can we start? Can you commit to 30 minutes a day of just starting? So lead gen, lead follow-up, going on appointments, everything that is face-to-face, I consider an appointment right now. So open houses, listing appointments, buyer appointments, all of that is combined in one. So asking yourself, what am I doing to maximize my appointments? Something for those of you that are on teams, you know, one of the biggest struggles that we have is tracking numbers, right? And getting agents to report their numbers. And an aha that I had recently in talking with someone else was the reason that we have so much frustration around that is we're tracking unverifiable numbers coupled with human behavior. So the only verifiable metrics there are appointments set, appointments held, agreements signed, contracts written, closings. Dials, hours of lead gen, contacts are not verifiable. Anybody can put a number into a spreadsheet. Anybody can report a number, and most agents are highly optimistic. So they might say, I talked to 100 people when really they only talked to 80, but 20 of them they swear are going to call them back tomorrow. So they're going to say 100 because they're optimistic, right? So instead of trying to push a wheelbarrow full of rocks up a hill, hold them accountable to the verifiable metrics. Hold yourself accountable to the verifiable metrics. Start with appointments set. If your goal is 2 appointments set, awesome. What do you have to do to set 2 appointments? Is that 40 contacts? Is that 80 contacts? Well, if you're not tracking your numbers, you don't know, right? You don't know your conversions. You don't know where you need to be more intentional. You don't know where you're having the right conversations. The verifiable metrics are appointments set, appointments held, agreements signed. So buyer brokerage agreements or listing agreements, contracts written, closings, and then of course profit or GCI, if you want to add that on the end. right? It's your it's your CGI, it's your career growth initiative. Those are the verifiable metrics. We have to start there and then work backwards to see how we're going to get there, right? Another thing with appointments right now, guys, is that you don't have to wait to have appointments anymore. You don't have to send folks away and have them think about something and not come back. So for instance, if Philip is doing lead generation this morning and he gets somebody on the phone and they're a qualified buyer that's motivated, Philip can say, "Hi, Mr. Smith, do you have about an extra 30 minutes today? Can we jump on a Zoom call? I'd like to share some things with you." "Well, yeah, Philip, I totally do. I don't have anything on my calendar for another hour." "Awesome. Do you mind holding on for just a moment?" Philip puts him on hold, sends him a Zoom link, jumps on Zoom, and he executes the appointment. On-demand appointments. We don't have to wait anymore. And Megan said, what's the new normal? Well, first of all, I always say normal is a setting on a washing machine. Like, what the heck is normal, right? Normal is a setting on a washing machine. That's what it is. Like, I don't think there's ever going to be a normal again. I don't think that we live in a generation or we live in a society now where there's ever going to be normal. I think that we live in a very fast-paced, instant gratification, constantly pivoting environment in society. And that's proven by the way our younger generations are coming up, right? So what we have to be aware of is how are we pivoting and how fast are we getting comfortable with adoption, right? If something isn't comfortable, how quickly are we willing to lean into it to get comfortable? Like on-demand appointments. That is something that does not have to ever stop. Because think about it, you get them on a Zoom, which most millennials and people under the age of 40 would actually prefer. Like, I just figured out I can do yoga with Adrienne every morning and I don't have to get in my car and drive to a yoga studio. I don't have to wait for the instructor. I don't have to worry about a place to put my mat. I will never pay for yoga ever again because this is way more convenient, right? And so what if Philip jumps on, does that appointment, and then the buyer says, "Yeah, I'm ready to sign an agreement. I want you to send houses over this afternoon." Awesome. Let's jump on. I'm going to share my screen with you and walk you through how to sign an agreement on DocuSign. And then I'm going to send it over to you and stay on the line in case you have any questions. Boom, you're in business. You just had an agreement signed and you didn't have to leave your office. And it took you all of 45 minutes from the time that you picked up the phone and had initial contact to the time the agreement was signed. The question is, are you willing to go into the uncomfortability to make that happen and have those conversations? And yeah, I'm not going to lie, like leaning into it and acceptance is the first step. Are the first 5 probably going to be a little rocky? Yup, they probably are. They might even be a little bit of a hot mess. And that's okay, because the 6th through the 150th won't. Does that make sense? So that's appointments. And then, you know, again, we have to make sure that we're not allowing our limiting beliefs and our objections to become the buyer and the seller's objections. We have to make sure that our limiting beliefs aren't creating the objections for our buyers and sellers. Just because we may not buy a house sight unseen doesn't mean that our buyers and sellers won't. Just because we only need to see the house once, we want to see the house multiple times before we buy, doesn't mean they do. My house that I'm sitting in Florida, I saw one time, 10 minutes, walked through it, said, it's it. And I was in Washington for the whole sales process. That wouldn't work for everybody. For me, it worked. I had a reliable inspector that I trusted. I had a lender that I trusted. I never talked to my lender with Keller Mortgage on the phone once because I didn't want to. I don't have time for that. Yet if I would have had a realtor that was like, no, you need to slow down and you need to do this, you need to do that, I probably would have said, well, then you're not the realtor for me, right? So we really have to make sure, are we creating the objections? Or are we allowing them to create the objection? And then are we isolating the objection over here to move them forward and change their way of thinking because we're the expert? So lead generation, lead follow-up, go on appointments, scripts and role play. I know we have only a few minutes and I want to open up for questions. So I'm going to fly through these last 2 pretty quickly. Bottom line, get a script partner. If you've been in the business a year, 23 years, get a script partner. And I would recommend a script partner in a different market. You get to hear new ways of doing things, innovative things, different markets, and you've automatically just generated a referral partner in another market. And then negotiating contracts. We've talked a lot about that. With negotiating contracts, if you're using an independent TC, here's some things that I say. Always, if they're licensed, we want to ask ourselves the question of what's in the best interest of the client, always. The client's best interest always has to be top of mind. So I use the example of, let's say that the inspection comes back and we need to replace a $500 water heater. Mr. Realtor's on the road. He's in appointments all afternoon. Our inspection deadline's at 5 o'clock and we got to get this going. I have a licensed TC. It's probably in the best interest of my buyer for my TC to go ahead and negotiate that $500 water heater, get the amendment signed and get it sent over, because the realtor's not going to be able to do it. Now, if it's a $10,000 roof, it's not in the best interest of the TC to do it because the TC wasn't involved in the original writing of the contract, the negotiations, the pricing, all of that. So in that situation, the TC will get an extension signed and the agent will step back in and help with those negotiations. So going back, the moral of the story here is, are you using your leverage at the highest efficiency and possibility that you can, or are you holding on to everything because you think that you do it better than everybody? And I know that stings a little bit, and it's usually the truth if it stings, right? So I hope this was helpful. I know that was a lot of information in 28 minutes. Does anybody have any questions or ahas?
It's always good to be reminded that it doesn't have to be perfect. You have to do something, because I am a perfectionist and I often sit and pick things apart to the point of not doing them. And I have to finally just call it and put it out there and be done with it, because it's never up to my standard, whether I do it or someone else does it.
100%, Megan. Like, just get into action. Just start.
Stood out for me too. I like that. Praise a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that my team is worried about how fast they can adopt. That means they're ready to run a little faster, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can start putting the pressure on now.
Well, yeah, and I think this time exercise, BJ, is a really good one to know when you can turn up the pressure.
Absolutely.
Right? It's a capacity audit, right? My friends Alyssa and Lucas talked about it on our call this morning. On capacity, because sometimes as a leader, we think, oh, they're not that busy, and they are really that busy. We sometimes have an unrealistic view of how long things really take when we want them done right? If I do it, it's not going to be done right. It'll be done quick, but it's not going to be done right. And so sometimes I'll attach my time frames to them, and that's not accurate. And then the reverse also. Sometimes they're like, I'm so overwhelmed, I can't do it. And when we sit down and go through their capacity list and we realize that their time blocking is broken, they're living out of their email, there's no structure to their priorities in their task list, right? And those are the things that we start to see through that audit and that we can tweak.
This really is you have to slow down to go faster. So you do have to take the time to sit and evaluate it and go through all those. And I got to be honest with you, that's probably the hardest thing for me, is just to stop and evaluate. Yeah.
And right now, BJ, more than ever, is a time that we can actually do it, because it is a little bit, we do have a little bit more time. Something that I've started that really helps me is that the first 30 minutes of my day, before I do anything, before I open my email, before I start lead gen, before I do anything in the business, if I have a project, that 30 minutes is solely devoted to that project. Because if I put that in the middle of the day, the end of the day, it's gonna all of a sudden not be a priority. It's gonna be the first thing that's gonna come off when someone calls or needs something. But if I take that first just 30 minutes in the morning, by the end of the week, I already have 2.5 hours into that project.
Yeah.
Right? So simple, yet it requires getting into action, right?
Agreed.
Thank you, BJ.
Thank you.
If any of you would like to chat or if I can help with anything, you can go to meetwithbrindley.com and set a call on my calendar, or you can contact me at brindley@kw.com. We also do a business with Brindley every other Friday. We'll have it this Friday. And if you email me, I can get you information. And it's basically a call like this where people just get on and ask me questions.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, it was
Help.
meetwithbrindley.com, and what was your email address?
It's brindley@kw.com. You can also find me on Facebook. There's only one Brindley Tucker, thank goodness.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We sure appreciate it.
I hope this was helpful. And if you just do one thing, do the capacity audit. Write down everything you're doing and track how long it's taking you. Just start there, because that will tell a story that you can then build upon on what to do next.
I love it.
Awesome.
Thank you. It was great to meet you today.
Nice to meet you too. Bye, guys.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.